Please welcome to the stage moderator Shirley Sagawa, Alice Kwan, Mayor Derek Rainey, Amy Sovacool, and Niger Wesley for our next conversation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shirley Sagawa, and I'm so thrilled to be here. I had the privilege of working alongside many people in this room to help bring President Clinton's vision to life. So raise your hand if you were part of that world, inside and outside government. I've seen a bunch of you here, so thank you so much. I also had the chance to work with the late Eli Segal, who a dear friend, and Harris Wofford, Senator Kennedy, all of whom are dearly missed. And also the First Lady, Hillary Clinton, who did so much to support the passage of the legislation and has remained a champion. And I'm happy to say, as has Chelsea Clinton, and it's wonderful to have the next generation of leadership from the Clinton family be so invested in this program. We had such great hopes when we did this legislation. We were going to get things done that weren't getting done. We were going to change the lives of the people who served. And we were going to build a stronger America where people see problems and work together to solve them. And I think we've done a little bit of that, which is pretty great. And so much more to come. But one of the things that has happened in a powerful way that I don't think we fully appreciated at the time was how AmeriCorps was going to build this amazing pipeline of people who are going to play essential roles in the health of this country writ widely. And I've always thought of this as AmeriCorps as a sort of a civic apprenticeship. So you're building your civic muscles while you're building your work skills and leadership skills. And I do think that term really captures what this is all about. And in the early days, there were programs that made that explicit. Teach for America was one of those programs that was going to lead people from service into a career in education. But so many other programs have done that in so many different ways. It's absolutely, I think, well documented, the role that AmeriCorps has had in creating the next generation, not just of teachers, but education leaders from across the board. VISTA, which predated AmeriCorps but became part of AmeriCorps, it has been a source of nonprofit leaders for many decades, and other programs like Public Allies and so many others have followed that pathway. So today we're going to hear from some amazing leaders in their own right to talk about this sort of pipeline phenomenon, which I'm pretty excited to have a chance to pull out of them what they know. And I'm going to start with Mayor Rainey. Who is a Renaissance man, by the way. I don't know if you saw his bio, but this man is a minister, musician, entrepreneur, athlete, and it turns out a mayor and somebody who has something really important to say on this topic. So tell us about how AmeriCorps has led to your role as mayor of Wrightsville.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Shirley. I'm very grateful to be here. I bring you great greetings from the great city of Wrightsville, Arkansas. Many of you have not heard of it before, but it's just 10 minutes south of Little Rock. But I also have the opportunity and the pleasure and the blessing to serve in the city of Little Rock as well. And I served because of my AmeriCorps experience. One of the things I've reflected on recently is you never know when an opportunity comes back around. And it was the thing that sparked a fire in you. I was a senior in high school at Parkview Arts and Science Magnet High School, and City Year was about to start. They had a group of corps members who were Sarah Robertson, who eventually became executive director, Dave Moore, and Lizeth. And I remember doing service projects as part of student council.
Wow.
And not understanding that I was going to be a part of this movement by just doing, we did some landscaping and beautification at the school. And I thought that was what I was going to do. I was like, I could plant trees all day. This is great. I could do murals. But it became more than that. When I became a Corps member, after graduating from Morehouse College, I said, I need to come back home. And I needed to give back to those who had given to me, who had invested in me. And that's what led me into this AmeriCorps lifer experience, where I've done projects now at my elementary, middle, and high school, my after-school program, and Boys and Girls Club. And those who remember me as a young kid remember that I wasn't the best kid as well, but I was one who appreciated connection and fellowship. And AmeriCorps has shown me that it's not just those who you serve, but they're investing in you when you serve them. And I'll just kind of say that even from my career, my Eli Siegel AmeriCorps Award paid for my graduate school experience at the Clinton School of Public Service. So doubling up on that experience, serving 2 years in a row, over 3,500 hours of service, showed me that we can give so much more, and it's not about what we get, but it's what we give.
That's fantastic. So, Amy. Amy is the CEO of Conservation Legacy, which is one of the leading youth corps in the country, and part of the Corps Network, which is such an important part of our whole landscape of service. I'm really interested in what your thoughts are about the skills that people are developing through their service that lead to a career.
Sure. Well, it's good morning, everyone. It's really awe-inspiring to be in this room and with my fellow panelists up here. And I think about 2 or 3 things here. One is grit, one is purpose, and another is just the uniqueness that comes from an AmeriCorps experience that you can't replicate in any other space. And I think of grit first. We did a study a while ago now, but it showed that young people who were serving in corps had 980% greater grit than non-AmeriCorps, non-Conservation Corps members. That's a huge number. I almost didn't believe it. But then when you think about what it takes to be an AmeriCorps member, especially serving on public lands, you're dealing with heat, you're dealing with rain, you're dealing with dirt, and all of the other things that you have to develop a lot of sense of resiliency, personal resiliency, to be successful. So I think that's a really important part of service, and I know it transcends not just corps, but other locations or other types of service as well. Purpose, you talked about purpose, and I think Domingo also talked about purpose. So that is a common theme, and that leads, in terms of workforce development, a generation of young people that are graduating or finishing their terms of service that are bringing that sense of purpose to their workplaces, other community organizations, cities, towns, other federal agencies, civic organizations, I think is really important. And then another one, there is something unique, and it's hard to put your finger on, about having a AmeriCorps term of service. And on my way here, I posted on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, this is where I'm going to be. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm going to read one response to my LinkedIn post of one of our alums, from about 10 years ago, because I think she kind of hits on this. She said, "This type of national service gave me the foundational civic understanding to lead me to a profession in local government administration. No traditional education experience could replicate my deep commitment to serving residents as a civic servant." I don't think I can say that any better, but that connection of developing a sense of service through service and then bringing that into the workforce is something that's incredibly powerful and valuable.
It is. And every study that talks about sort of lifelong health and happiness talks about purpose. And it's, where do you get that? Well, there's many ways to get it, but AmeriCorps is clearly one of the best. Niger, you are a 2019 FEMA Corps alum, and I remember when FEMA Corps was created, I was tremendously excited that it could pave the way to a whole host of programs that address needs that the federal government is seeking to solve and doesn't have the Army to do it. So I'm curious to hear about your experience there, and how did it affect your future career?
Yes, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity for being here. As she had mentioned, so I was a FEMA Corps alum I'm a FEMA Corps alum. I graduated the program back in 2019. So it's pretty good to see all the A's in the audience. I know you all have the new updated A's. It was the old version back then, but it was still a nice A. So my experience back then as a FEMA Corps member, I was a Corps member first, and then I became a team leader. So I was able to get two sides of the spectrum when it came to the service of the program. So my experience was quite interesting because I don't think there's many other experiences out there or services out there like AmeriCorps, FEMA Corps, where you're the supervisor of people that you work and live with. So that was quite the experience in and upon itself, because you're trying to maintain camaraderie with the team and also build relationships where you try to keep it professionally and personally, which can be kind of hard when living with individuals. So I had the opportunity to gain some experiences from that. With just knowing how to manage, be a better manager. And managing, what I mean for that is when I break down the word, I'll try to look at all fashions of management, which is managing people, managing teams, being able to help the people that I serve, and also time management. How can I help structure the team so that we're have more guidance and direction moving forward? And also just managing tasks or priorities throughout my service term. So I was able to gain some of those skills there. And then the other one I was able to gain, which I believe is the most important thing to me, is being able to invest. So when I look at the word investment, I look at it as how can I invest in people? So I'm really team-centric. That's kind of like my leadership style. So I try to focus on how best can I invest in my teammates. So funny story, when I was a team leader, my teammates actually did a PowerPoint, a presentation on the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System. So it's funny enough that we're in Arkansas now, and then we actually did a research project on that. So I had about 3 teammates who took part in this project. And one of them specifically, I'm not going to name drop because he's still an AmeriCorps person, but he gave me the hardest time ever because he's not big on public speaking. So I seen this as a challenge for him to grow. And I had a big picture in mind. He just kind of was like, Nigeria, do I have to do this? And I was kind of feeling bad for myself because I was like, am I putting him in a worse predicament for himself? So we fast forward to the presentation, and he did a great job. He did phenomenal. He did black out because he said he doesn't remember what he talked about. But nonetheless, what I truly value from that engagement, that interaction I had with him was after he presented, he said, thank you, Nigeria. I really appreciate you for doing this for me. Because now he developed a skill set for public speaking that he can take that with him throughout his life. So I try to invest in people, just trying to develop their skill sets. And then as being a FEMA Corps liaison for the FEMA Corps program, when I manage team leaders, I try to invest in them by experiencing and kind of developing their growth so that way they have that professionalism when they exit the program. So from my experience with FEMA Corps, I would say just management within that totality of people, and then time management, and then also just investing in people, seeing the value in that.
Absolutely. Alice, so I'm just going to brag about you for a minute because you're a leader in Deloitte Consulting, but you have played such an outside role supporting in communities in your work. So thank you for that. And one of the things you've been involved with is creating the Deloitte Career Catalyzer that recruits City Year AmeriCorps members. So can you talk about that? Why did you do that?
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and so happy to be here along with my panelists. So which one of us does not look like the other, right? So I represent a private organization. So I did not grow up being a do-gooder. Immigrant family, first-generation Chinese American was not in our DNA. It was like, go out, go get work, go get a job, get paid. And so it really wasn't part of anything that I thought about. And then you fast forward, I joined Deloitte, which is a consulting, it's a professional services firm. And you're like, what's that? Consulting, tax, audit, right, that kind of thing. And we're actually the largest globally. So we serve lots of different clients, some in private sector, some in public sector. And so through that work, one of our partners was very involved with City Year. And he was a leader in our practice. He brought City Year into one of our town halls, and that's how I first got exposed to City Year. From there, I became a mentor to the Life After City Year program. From there, got onto the New York City board, And then from there, also now I lead the relationship between City Year and Deloitte. And so through all those interactions, I got more exposure to AmeriCorps members, City Year members, and realized the value that they brought and the skill sets that they brought, which were so transferable in terms of what we do. And it's one of these things that I don't think is very, it's not as natural of a leap, right? So, for Nigeria to go from an AmeriCorps to FEMA, it makes more sense, right? From AmeriCorps to military might make more sense. But to jump to private organizations, sometimes it's just not as intuitive. But I'll tell you, like some of the things even that Amy was talking about, right? Having grit totally makes sense for what we need to do day to day with our clients. Being resilient, right? Being a good team leader, also very transferable skills. Right? Having the ability to work in ambiguity, right? Makes a lot of sense. And so these are the kinds of skills that I saw in AmeriCorps members that were so important for what we do as a living. And so we used to hire people, by chance. Once in a while, someone might join, and we were like, oh, this person is fantastic. And so then over time we said, well, why don't we create something that is more of an institutionalized pathways between City Year and Deloitte? And so 2 years ago, out of this brainstorm, it was Jim, his leadership team. We had Kana, who's the strategy officer, Mithra, who's the recruiting officer, and John, who is the chief operations officer. And we said, what if we made this a little bit more industrialized, and what if we made it more real and intentional? And so from there, what we decided to do was broadly advertise to all the City Year core members what life outside of City Year could be in the private sector, and in particular for Deloitte. And we knew that because this wasn't an intuitive jump, we spent a lot of time talking about what the translatable skills would be. And we had City Year and AmeriCorps members talk about what they're doing right now in consulting and how that was transferable, how what they did with difficult students is not that different than what you would do with difficult clients. And so I think it made it a lot easier to relate. And so we did a lot of information sessions. We also were really intentional about doing a lot of hand-holding to make sure that AmeriCorps members were ready for the interviews when they went through it at a private organization or a place like Deloitte. So we did a lot of case studies. We did a lot of behavioral interviews, which again, might not have been the natural thing if you were to go into nonprofit, as an example. And so from there, in our first year, we were able to hire 25 people from City Year into Deloitte. And the class of students that we got, 70% of them were outside of schools that we would normally recruit from. So from an organizational perspective, it was really a big plus for us too, because of the diversity of candidates that we could get that we wouldn't normally be getting off of campus. And so there was, a lot of upside also in terms of what we wanted to do from an overall diversity perspective. And so, it's because of these experiences and because of the success that we've had that we're now pushing the envelope even more and, trying to encourage others to do the same.
Very cool. So I want to go back to you just to say, that this is a great example, and you got involved with this because you were familiar with the program and you could see how powerful the skills that these young people were getting and how they would translate. But how do we get other employers to see that? We've talked a lot about, a service year should be the kind of credential, AmeriCorps should be a credential. And to do that, employers have to understand the value. So have you thought about that? How do we take what you've done, not to give you more competition, but how do we get other employers to kind of see that?
Yeah, I think that it's several things, right? One is making sure that we get good stories like this out there, right? And so when Amora asked me to come, I said absolutely. Even though it's really hard to get here. Because I think it's so important to spread the word about what this can mean for private organizations, because again, it's not, I don't think it's as intuitive. So one is just getting some champions out there. I mean, all of you all work with organizations, whether they be on your boards, right, or people that volunteer, but talking to them about this as an opportunity and having them spread the word, I think is important. I also think that there's some branding to be done for AmeriCorps as well, right? Like, explicitly branding what it means in terms of some of these transferable skills, because what the Corps members bring is amazing and can make you really successful in private organization. The other thing I would say is go to the source. So having purpose in an organization is really important to young talent. And so if organizations know that this is something that young talent cares about, guess what? They're gonna follow. And they're gonna want to value that year of service, because even though this is a soft economy now, things will change, right? And at the end of the day, it will still be the talent that drives where organizations go. And so I think that, by doing some of these things, we can certainly start to move the needle on it.
Makes sense. I know FEMA, Nigeria, has hired a lot of FEMA Corps members, and one might say it built FEMA Corps as a deliberate pipeline. Is that true, and why is that?
Yes, so we do have a pipeline from FEMA Corps members to becoming FEMA employees. So I was a part of that pipeline myself. So back in 2019, when I graduated from the program, so we have two different pretty much tiered positions within FEMA. You have reservists, which is part-time, and you have Corps employees, which is full-time 2 to 4 year contracts. So when I did the fast track, we have our fast track hiring event, and essentially that's our pipeline from FEMA Corps members to FEMA employees. So it has grown since its inception back in 2016, and even when I did it back in 2019, it has grown even further. Kind of jealous of the opportunities that the members have now with all the vacancies that have been a part of the fast track hiring program. So I was a reservist with FEMA. I was an environmental compliance review specialist within the environmental historical preservation program of FEMA, and I became a full-time employee after that. So currently right now with our fast track hiring event, so what we do, just to give you all an overview, we invest a lot within our members. So one of our panelists had mentioned that it was a lot of hand-holding, so we kind of do that within the same fashion with our members, where we have a template pretty much with federal resumes that has been vetted by Ochiko, which is our hiring manager. So we have that template for the members. We do informational interviews, and then we also coordinate with our FEMA partners, which is the hiring managers for those different programs or cadres that we call it in FEMA. And they come speak to our members with introductions, like their cadre introductions, and that kind of just entails, they talk about the positions that they have available, what the qualifications entail, the skill sets needed for those positions, and it kind of give you like a rundown of what the day in the life of that position is. And it also offers members the opportunities to ask them questions. So pretty much in a nutshell, we kind of cut out the middle person for when members apply for jobs and have them talk directly to the hiring managers. So just to kind of give you all some fun stats about our fast track hiring event, the most previous class that graduated March of 2023. So the fast track hiring event is optional. So for those who participated in the event, it was about 39 members. 37 of those members actually received a job offer with FEMA. So we had about a 95% conversion rate with the March class of 2023. And then our most recent class, July of this year, 2023, we had about, I believe, 35 members who participated in the fast track hiring event, and about 29 members received offers with FEMA. So we had about a 79% conversion rate. So I'm saying all this to say is we invest a lot into our members to help them become FEMA employees, and we definitely see the upside of it. So the upside of it is that the members already have had previous experience with FEMA during their service term. So this year, which was unprecedented for us, we had teams deployed to Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, and Florida. We still maintain a pretty consistent footprint in Florida from the previous disaster. So they're able to take those skill sets, experiences directly with FEMA and apply it to their resume, so that way it shows that they have the direct correlation with FEMA, so that way it shows that their qualifications for those positions. So I'm proud to say that we're definitely improving our fast track hiring event throughout each class, and we hope to kind of consistently maintain that pipeline from FEMA Corps members to FEMA employees, because we show that those who do the program, they pretty much align with our mission of FEMA, which is helping people before, during, and after disasters. So by members serving, they're providing that service. It aligns perfectly with our mission in FEMA, and we're able to have people who focus more on the people aspect so that way we can support survivors in the field.
Fantastic. I mean, it's so interesting with these two examples where we have kind of a specific employer and a specific program. And I think that, what's been complicated, and I think a problem we need to solve for, is how do we go to a more field-wide opportunity base and pipelines. Corps, I think, have a pretty good history of understanding that one of the main goals of Corps is for people to leave and go on to work or school. And I'm curious to hear from Amy about, especially when you have young people who haven't had a lot of advantages in life, how does service become that in a broader way?
Sure. So, and if I may, I'd like to go back just a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. On this idea of how do we try to get folks, private employers especially, to understand, I think there's a call to action for all of us who are currently engaging with AmeriCorps members to help them translate those skills to their resume. Mm-hmm. That leadership, that resiliency, that communication, all of those things that, and you talked about, right? Your member who gained their communication skills as their term of service. Those are really important for us as program managers to help translate. My husband served overseas for two or three tours of duty. He came back, I watched him struggle. Translate that experience, mm-hmm. which is incredible, the amount of complexity he was dealing with, struggle with translating that back on his resume. So I think I'll just say, there's some work for us to do as those of us that are in the field to help our members also translate that, so that when you see a resume, a recruiter sees a resume, that they understand that.
That makes tons of sense.
Yeah, so just flagging that. So in terms of what Corps do, we design programs, right, that don't have a lot of prerequisites, that we can look for and recruit those who will benefit most professionally and personally, and provide the skills and the training and the expertise needed to be successful in a career. And I think there's a variety of ways that we do that with very intentional programs, fire training programs where a young person can come in with no experience and learn how to run a chainsaw, learn how to be on a fire line, learn how to put fire on the ground safely, which is really fun if you haven't done that before. Learn how to do that, and then have a direct pipeline after working alongside all the federal land management agency partners, have those networks and have those connections so that they can move in. And I think there's work still to be done there to make sure that there's non-competitive hiring authority available at the federal level especially, but I think state commissions are here in this room too, right? There's states mm-hmm. that can also help us with all of this.
Explain what non-competitive hiring is, I think, for folks who aren't living in the federal government jargon.
That's fair. I'm living in the federal government jargon, even though I'm not a federal employee. Non-competitive hiring status gives an individual an opportunity, a leg up, basically, into a federal mm-hmm. career, not having to compete against the general public. I know it's available for Peace Corps and Vista. It should be available for everybody that serves a year. That would be amazing.
Thank you. And some states are doing it, so I think that's been an exciting trend. And that does help build those broader cross-sections. And I will say, listening earlier to, I think it was Domingo talking about the composting and his career path, you can see how sort of organically, not to make a pun, that might develop just from, exposure, to things that you aren't necessarily aware of. And I think AmeriCorps certainly does that in many ways that we can't anticipate. But once a young person who's not been out in the woods is out in the woods, they might realize that there are a whole host of things that could lead to. In your organization, where do most people go on to after they complete their terms?
Sure, so it's varied. For the programs that are very specific in terms of wildfire development, we have a program specifically for military veterans, the Veterans Fire Corps. Over 50% of those folks go directly into wildland fire. And those that don't have decided, right, that that's not their career, which is also equally important. So a lot of success in wildland fire. And Corps across the country have pretty intense individual placement programs where young people are serving alongside somebody who's with the Park Service or the Forest Service for a year and gaining skills. in our resource assistant program, for example, over 40% of those young people go directly into a term or an employment opportunity with the federal agencies as well. So a lot go into the federal agency of where they're working. They have made those networks. They've developed the networks that are really important for career development. They've developed the skills. They've proven themselves as somebody that is going to be a very valuable employee. So that's certainly one. And then I think we also have a lot of alums that stay with us or go to other corps. And one thing I'm incredibly proud of is 15 years ago now, actually, we started programs on tribal lands and with Native communities in the Southwest. And a story that I didn't really think about until I was reflecting on our 15th anniversary of our Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps is that 15 of the 18 full-time staff there are AmeriCorps alums. There was no infrastructure, there's no community infrastructure 15 years ago for conservation programs in these communities. We helped build that through AmeriCorps by starting small and having a few small crews, and then they became leaders in their communities, and then that continued to grow. So there's also a special place, I think, for us that are in the AmeriCorps world that we try to retain at least a portion of the talent to help really continue to building the communities that we know are really important.
That's really important. And I love a couple of things you said, I like everything you said, of course, but that you said people could try out a career that maybe it turns out that's not their best fit. And I know in education that's really important. You know, somebody who invests, I'm going to be a teacher, and they get in there and it's just not meant for them. They're not necessarily going to be the best teacher for those children. And at least they can know that early on and move on. And I think that's one important point. And I think there's always a struggle. One of the great things we've always loved about AmeriCorps is you're serving alongside people who aren't necessarily just like you. And yet it's also so wonderful when you see a community take the young people who are living there and think about them as assets and future leaders. It's really a transformational, I think, orientation that AmeriCorps, just by definition, brings to a community. So love that. And I would love to hear from Mayor Rainey, just like thinking about kind of the double bottom line of changing people's lives through service and then the service that helps others. What has that meant in terms of a career? What has that meant in terms of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So the double bottom line should be in every industry that we operate in. It shouldn't be just the bottom line of profit. Because even that service has some type of product and someone's making that. And when I was reflecting on this question and reflecting on my experience and the people who have invested in me, AmeriCorps says, what? We're going to get things done. Well, what I learned in Citier was I also need to serve with an open heart and an open mind. And that I'm working with people versus working for people. And that's what I learned at the Clinton School. So this double bottom line goes and extends, as we're talking about, a pipeline of career, of transferable skills, learning to see what the need is for a community, but not determine that need for them is very important. Because the community should be able to come up with the solution from within. But we, as AmeriCorps members and alumni, help get to that solution. We help that student who's struggling with reading and math to then become a Pulaski County Sheriff, which I was just approached and reminded by a student who I helped in the 2nd grade, and just this past September came to me and said, "Mr. D, you don't remember me, do you?" Well, one, he's taller than me, he has super huge muscles, and I'm thinking like, I don't, and he says I see his name tag, and it says Buford. And as soon as I saw it, my mind went back to the child who was struggling from 2nd to 5th grade, not with reading and math. He was struggling with the loss of his father or the absence of a father figure. He was struggling with anger that he had that he couldn't deal with. And he reminded me of everything. And that is the bottom line that we really should be looking at, the double bottom line of we make an impact on people who we will never know. And some we may get the opportunity and the blessing to be able to hear it and to see the impact come around full circle. But today he shared with me that he remembers when his mom would call me first before calling the school. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many other people have that same experience where they've touched someone's life, changed the family dynamic, and has inspired someone to give back. So that's what I mean as far as the double bottom line. It wasn't about my service. Now he's serving his community the best he can because of the service that we were doing at his school.
That's fantastic. That was very powerful. We've got a couple more minutes, so I wanted to just, above all of the specific skills, we've heard a lot about really core skills, but a lot of you have touched on just the orientation that the people who have done AmeriCorps get to their world and their role in making it better. And that has got to be something that many employers should value, maybe more, as you point out, perhaps every employer ought to value that. And I was thinking about a study when I was at Service Year Alliance. We partnered with a company called Burning Glass. I believe there was a City Year alum at Burning Glass, and that's why they came forward and wanted to do this. But they did a study of a whole bank of resumes that they had based on the database they had, and determined that people who do a service year were more likely to work in education and social services than comparable people. They were more likely to complete their college degree. And really importantly, they were more likely to possess organizational and leadership skills, and to list those as part of their what they have to offer. And I was hoping just to ask you all in like the couple minutes we have left to just reflect on the leadership piece of it, because this would be a great way to get more workers in whatever field it is. And certainly we have some high priority fields we've been talking about. I think in this time we can certainly see the need for more disaster workers and conservation workers, et cetera. But talk a little bit about, if you have any sense of, are we getting leaders out of this program? And I'll start with, why don't we start here?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was mentioning that it was through my experience with AmeriCorps City Year members that first got me interested in doing more. And it is because of what they were able to bring to the table. And, I was reflecting on some of the conversations with the panel as well. Having people like that in your organization changes the culture of your organization, right? Because they want to give back and they pull the next generation forward. It has a huge ripple effect in terms of the overall workforce, and that makes an organization better as well, right? Getting back to the double bottom line. And so I think that this sense of them being better leaders, I think also them being more mature, quite frankly, right? So we hire tens of thousands of people right out of school. And I think you were mentioning at the table, some people are still flying paper airplanes in the team rooms, right? And doing social media coming right out of school. But when you have an AmeriCorps or City Year member coming to you after their year of service, they have led teams, right, of students. They're working with principals. They're running programs. And so the level of maturity and the output that you get is far beyond what you would get from someone at that level. And so I definitely see a lot of that, but those are just some of the tangible things in terms of leadership, mentorship, right, paying it forward, pulling up next generation, giving back, sense of purpose, like all of those are very special things.
That's really interesting. Who else wants to comment on this?
And I actually want to pay homage to a few who are in the room because they don't know it, but they helped me develop as a leader. And co-founders Michael Brown and Alan Casey for City Year, and then current President Jim Balfans and a mentor of mine, Stephen Spallows. Me watching from afar, seeing their example. So that's the part. Mm-hmm. The leadership develops from the example that we see. And when Alan Casey was running for office, he didn't know that he inspired me to make the connection between national community service and public service. And Big Citizenship was one of those books that I read about and learned how to be a citizen and lead through your own, I guess, ecosystem. The president of Morehouse College, when I was graduating, said, "We are all global leaders, but we must have a local focus." And my local focus showed me that what I can do in my community is more important than what I do globally, because I impact the global society through the leadership that I employ for myself, but also have with my teammates. So are we building leaders? The answer is yes. There are leaders who are all around this world who are AmeriCorps alumni who may never get the recognition. But I was telling, I think Alice, you were asking me like, so how are you, you're mayor, and how are you doing that? And, are you doing it full time? And no, I learned how to work on nothing as a Corps member. Who else do you know will work for 10 hours a day, come up and show the next day, do it for 10 months for less than $1,000 a month? Someone who understands the impact and the purpose of why they get up in the morning. And I think that's what we're really doing when we're looking at the leadership.
Wow, very powerful. Najir, Amy?
I'll just add here that I think we're developing leaders of leaders as well, especially in the Corps world. We have crew leaders and we had field supervisors. There's a step ladder of leadership that is really important and really valuable. And leadership is a big term, and we know that exists. I think what fundamentally Corps and other AmeriCorps programs develop is leaders with a set of values that are principle-based, which is so important. We were talking about unity and civic engagement, that quality of leadership is needed now more than ever in society, and that's what we do with that purpose-driven, value-driven leadership. So I think I'm just adding maybe a little specificity to that type of leaders, because it's not just any leader, I think, that we're developing. We're developing young people with that sense of purpose, with a value system of civic engagement, of engaging with one another, with teams. So you talked a lot about your team development, right? If you had not been in part of AmeriCorps, how would your approach to team development in your role change? So I just think that's important for us to reflect on and value as well as one of our pieces, because that has set what I think some of our leaders coming out, that they have that direction. That's important.
Very insightful. You get the last word on this topic.
Yeah, just a couple of things I would just add to this is within our program, with AmeriCorps too, as a service within its totality, definitely one of the leadership skills that we're able to add is problem solving. And some people may think that problem solving could be this whole big thing, we trying to get people to the moon, but it's really just simple things, trying to gain clarity on solving issues that you have on hand. So I think one of the leadership skills is having problem-solving skills, because you can tackle pretty much any challenge that comes your way. And problem-solving is also a skill to have, not within the professional world, but also personally too, because as we get older and we come up to more challenges, we got to figure out ways to kind of navigate that. So I would just add problem-solving, and then communication too, being able to communicate to people from a diverse background. So during my service year, I've had people from all different walks of life, and people respond differently to things that you say. So trying to just get to a common ground, so that way when I communicate and when we communicate amongst each other, we all are able to interpret it pretty well. So I would just add problem solving and just communicating to different backgrounds of people.
Fantastic. Well, this panel has given us all a lot to think about. I mean, one thing that's kind of running through my mind is, we're all super frustrated at how AmeriCorps should be so much bigger, right? Like, we all think that. And just think what the world would be like if we had these leaders. I mean, more of these folks. And what's really cool about AmeriCorps, I think probably at the size it is still like the biggest leadership development program in the country, right? And it makes me feel like most leadership programs, and I'm sure a lot of you all have been in them, you have to apply, you have to already be a leader to get to be in a leadership development program, right? And here is a program where you get to just raise your hand and just say, and you might be raising your hand because you don't have anything else you can think you can do. You're like, well, this is the only job I can do, and that might be why you're there. But that means that people of all walks of life, of every skill level, of all, backgrounds, ideas, commitments, can raise their hand and just be in a leadership development program. And if that's the case, we ought to have that everywhere, because we really need these public-spirited leaders, not just in nonprofits, not just in, other corps, not just in schools, but really, across our country and certainly in our government. So I just want to thank you all for making that so concrete and so, at the same time, inspirational. So thanks so much for sharing all of your experiences. Thank you. And I think we're done.
Please turn your attention to the screen for the announcement of a new commitment to action.
On behalf of the team at the Schultz Family Foundation, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for being a part of this event, along with so many other passionate leaders who understand the power of national service to create a stronger country and brighter future for young people. At the Schultz Family Foundation, our mission and reason for being is to create greater opportunity accessible to all. And we see national service as an integral part of bringing that mission to life. Now, over the past 30 years, thanks in large part to the leadership and support from President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, and many of you in the room today, AmeriCorps has created opportunities for young people to develop skills while meeting critical community needs. But the truth is, AmeriCorps has to evolve. It has to become more equitable and accessible so that it can truly become a pathway of opportunity to any young person, no matter their background or station in life. We believe philanthropy has a shared responsibility with government and companies to make this happen. That's why we've made significant investment over the past 4 years to make AmeriCorps more accessible to any young person interested in answering the call to serve as a way to develop skills and launch a career while serving communities. In 2020, we launched the Washington COVID Response Corps as a joint partnership with Serve Washington during the height of the COVID-19 crisis in Washington state. By combining federal and state government resources with investment from private philanthropy, the program successfully engaged a diverse network of community organizations, including many host sites new to AmeriCorps. At the same time, the program created opportunities for young people who were disconnected from work and school as a result of the pandemic. Also in Washington state, in partnership with the Balmer Group, we expanded the program to a national service challenge to support national service as a pathway of opportunity for young people, especially young adults of color, as well as people from low-income households. We're so encouraged to see the progress to date in so many states like Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, and Washington. And now we are working in partnership with the National Governors Association to share these learnings with more states, with the hope of bolstering support for national service as a skills, readiness, workforce development, and economic growth engine. Next year, we look forward to launching a youth mental health corps with Pinterest, AmeriCorps, and America Forward that will allow young people to earn a credential and pursue careers in the mental health field as they help address the youth mental health crisis in schools and communities across the country. Service is a win-win-win. It bonds people with their country, connects them with their community, and allows them to develop skills to launch careers, and can also be a powerful economic catalyst to help young people navigate to jobs of the future. We are so deeply proud of the partnership with all of you in this important work and look forward to the next steps ahead. Thank you very much.
Please welcome AmeriCorps alum Stephanie Vestal.
Althea, Marquel, Michael, Amy, Cheyenne, Nick, and DJ. These are students I worked with during my 2 years of service as a City Year AmeriCorps member over 15 years ago, whose names will never leave me. They're my starfish stories. And as the story goes, one day a girl is walking along the beach and she sees thousands of starfish washed up, so she starts to throw them back in the ocean one by one. An older, some may say grumpy man, comes up and admonishes her. "You'll never save them all, little girl." But she looks at him, looks at the beach, picks up one starfish, throws it back in the ocean, and said, "Well, I made a difference to that one." Now, I know for many in this room, I did not need to explain that story, but when I first heard the story, it didn't end with that famous line. It continued with the man being so inspired by the little girl that he too started to throw starfish back in the ocean, and soon there were dozens of people from the community on the beach helping to save the starfish. All these years later, that second part of the story stays with me as the heart of my AmeriCorps experience, my personal and my professional life, my actions as a public servant, engaging community members, and business and building social cohesion. My name is Stephanie Vestal. I serve with City Year Rhode Island and City Year Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to be standing here today as an AmeriCorps alum and a current student at the Clinton School for Public Service. AmeriCorps was and still is a family, a community for me. It's the first place and the first people I felt comfortable coming out to. My time in AmeriCorps was full of amazing and wonderful people. For me, it's my city year friends who I make a point to call when I'm passing through their city or with whom I attend reunions as often as possible, usually around a service opportunity. My circle of AmeriCorps friends is diverse in every way that you can imagine. We are strong and we show up for each other. In the early weeks and months of the COVID-19 shutdown, our alumni service weekend group gathered for Zoom happy hours, and then we started gathering virtually during the day too. These meetings were utilizing some of our hobbies and skills to engage each other during an otherwise isolating time. So one of my friends taught us sign language, another taught yoga. I did history lessons. I know, you're all thinking I'm the cool one of the group. We did these because some of my friends had school-age children at home, and this was a help to them, but it was also an outlet and support and unifying experience for all of us. I know firsthand that AmeriCorps is an amazing way to propel young people into a successful future in any number of educational experiences, careers, and pathways. After my time as an AmeriCorps member, I worked for City Year Washington, D.C. for several years, and in that time decided I wanted to be a teacher. My challenge was I did not have a teaching degree, but I applied for and was granted a provisional license in Virginia, in large part because of my work experience in City Year. I set out to find a teaching position in Title I schools serving minority and low-income populations and was overjoyed to be hired as a kindergarten teacher at Herndon Elementary School. I loved my 5 years there before moving on to middle school history. And believe it or not, teaching kindergarten and 7th grade is remarkable similarities. Tie your shoes, blow your nose, please stop touching each other. I recall a conversation I had with my principal at Herndon just a couple years into my time there. Some colleagues and I had just come back from running our summer bookmobile, an effort to get free books and meals to families during the summer months. And we got on the topic of AmeriCorps because she commented on how I had engaged a bunch of students in games earlier that day. My response was, well, thanks to City Year, entertaining students and group games are like second nature to me. And she said that I was the first teacher in her 20-plus years of teaching of being an administrator at Title I schools that she had hired who was on a provisional license. She said that as soon as she saw AmeriCorps on my resume, she knew that I was going to be a fit at Herndon. So teaching is a job that I acquired and I excelled at because of the skills and experiences I gained as an AmeriCorps member. I'm often asked what drew me to the Clinton School for Public Service. Well, I heard about this amazing program when it first started in 2006, and I was in AmeriCorps. At that time, and over the next 15 years, I thought about applying several times, and I almost did. But I always came back to just not quite being ready to leave the service I was doing. But finally, with the pandemic and me deciding to take a break from teaching, the Clinton School came up again. This time, I had a conversation with my wife, and even though I said, it's in Arkansas, she said, let's go. And so here we are. My time at the Clinton School has been everything I'd hoped for and more. In addition to the amazing people and the enriching academic experiences I've had, I've also had the opportunity to engage directly in service through our Practicum International Public Service Project and Capstone. Last year, my team worked with the city of Little Rock to evaluate the community needs and wants of their public spaces. Over the summer, I lived in Manila, Philippines, working with a humanitarian NGO supporting internally displaced persons from violent conflict and environmental disasters. And this year, I'm serving as a strategy and policy fellow with the Little Rock School District, building community partnerships and creating a best practice manual for working with LGBTQ+ students. There is a direct line from my AmeriCorps experience to me being here at the Clinton School today. My hopes for the next 30 years of AmeriCorps are that we see more young people stepping up to serve their and other communities, that we see more communities, more organizations, and people positively impacted by the work of AmeriCorps. that more young people who serve in AmeriCorps have the same positive, life-changing experiences that I did, that they come out of their service realizing that they've gained immensely valuable and tangible skills, they've created impactful memories, and they've forged lifelong friendships that will continue to serve them. And that they use their AmeriCorps experience and skills to empower and change people, communities, the world, and a few starfish. Thank you to President Clinton and everyone who has laid the groundwork and will continue to work on AmeriCorps, which I know contributes to the well-being of our nation. Thank you.
Please turn your attention to the screen for a message from Utah Governor Spencer Cox.
I know that at times it can feel like we are more divided than ever as Americans. As governor of Utah, the #1 state for volunteering, I know firsthand the power of service and volunteering. Service brings people together across differences to see each other's humanity, to help our neighbors, and to tackle our community's most pressing needs. And over the past 30 years, AmeriCorps has facilitated volunteering with more than 1.25 million AmeriCorps members and millions more AmeriCorps senior volunteers. AmeriCorps has proven that there is no problem that cannot be solved when Americans unite. During that time, more than 22,000 Utahns have served with AmeriCorps, and tens of thousands more have served in AmeriCorps seniors. These members and volunteers are essential to our nation's economic and social well-being. They are the lifeblood of our schools and shelters, hospitals and hotlines, and civic, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations all across the country. I've seen people of different perspectives come together, united in purpose, with a shared mission to improve our communities. AmeriCorps is a shining example of how a modest government investment can deliver a powerful return for those who serve, for those whose lives are made better through the service of their neighbors, and for our democracy.
Please welcome Ry Barcott, U.S. Marine Corps veteran and CEO of With Honor.
All right. Hey, everybody. How are you this morning? Great. I'm Ry Barcott, and I'm the founder and CEO of With Honor. With Honor fights polarization in Congress by supporting principled veterans, and clearly we are doing a hell of a job. But we are trying, and it's an interesting thing. In Congress, about 70% of Congress used to have military service in particular. This was before AmeriCorps was even founded and we had a concept of civilian service. Now less than 20% of members of Congress have served in the military, and less than 25% have served in either the military or some form of national service. And with that, I'm including nurses and teachers and folks that have served in AmeriCorps. We actually work with one of 30. We support 30 veterans across both party lines in the U.S. House, and then there's 6 bipartisan veterans in the Senate. There is one veteran who also is a Teach for America alumni. I believe she's the only one that has that dual service. Her name is Chrissy Houlihan, and she was the founding vice chair of a bipartisan caucus called the Four Country Caucus, 4 as in F-O-R, Country Caucus, that now has 30 members in the House and has worked very closely with Voices for National Service and my very good friend now, Ann Mora, who will take a text or a call at any hour of the day or night. At least we sometimes do that, and have really is a really important advocate for this space to advance more service in the country. I'm going to say another word about that in a moment, but I just want to share a bit of a personal comment about service. My own path to service started in the military. I took an ROTC scholarship to UNC Chapel Hill, and I knew that I wanted to do make a difference in the world, and I assumed that would be the path that I would do that on. It was before September 11th, and most of the missions that the military was engaged in were of a peacekeeping nature. And so I decided to study Swahili at UNC Chapel Hill and took a summer fellowship, a paid fellowship that enabled me to go to the informal settlements in Nairobi and get to know other kids that were my age, about 20 at the time. And what I saw was this amazing sort of truism in life, which I've seen commented on many times at the Clinton Library, which is that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. You know? It's really a profound concept, and you can understand it as soon as you get out of your comfort zone and put yourself into somebody else's shoes, as we heard from the opening panel. So at any rate, that was my path to service. It was a dual form of service. I co-founded an NGO in Kibera, in the informal settlement in Nairobi. That organization now is 23 years old. I'm on the board. I co-founded it with 2 Kenyans, a nurse and a community organizer in the informal settlements. And it does really good work to help inspire a next generation of leaders in the community and provide innovative public health to that community and knowledge that can benefit others. And so at any rate, that was my own path to service, and I think it's really important what we do at a young age. You know, I'm in politics now, and there's this amazing statistic that if you vote between the age of 18 to 24 or so, you're something like 2 or 3 times more likely to be an active voter throughout the rest of your lives. If you serve during that period of time, you are more likely to be an engaged citizen. We know that. Many of you in this audience are experiencing it right now to this day. I just came back from Washington, D.C., where I was with my mentor and co-founder with Honor. He's a great champion for this cause. His name is David Gergen. Many of you know him. He's worked, of course, very closely with Alan Casey and so many others in this room. And about 4 weeks ago, a number of us who are mentees of David's decided that we were going to take out our tin cup and raise some money for a fellowship in his honor. And I was so pleased to be with Governor Wes Moore last night, or 2 nights ago, when he announced that he will be hosting the first David Gergen Summer Fellow in his office this summer. And this is a fellowship specifically for students who are between their first and second years at the Kennedy School, master's program, to go in and serve with top-notch leaders in government. We so need this. We need this at so many different levels. I mean, isn't it a stunning thing that less than 2% of Americans, young Americans, now serve? Less than 2. Less than 1 in the military and less than 2 otherwise. So we're trying to do something about that. With Honor, we're really focused on just supporting good ideas. And from the very beginning of this organization 5 years ago, the veterans in the caucus, Republicans and Democrats, 19 at the time, now 30, almost all of them veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, came together and said, listen, we want to advance more voluntary national service. We need more civic education as well in the country. And we're looking at practical ways of getting stuff done. And so a couple years ago, I'm so glad that Senator Chris Coons is on the agenda. Wow, what a national treasure. Senator Coons and Senator Roger Wicker, who's an Air Force veteran and is part of our bipartisan allies of vets in the Senate, came together with a bill called the CORE Act. Many of you are aware of it. The CORE Act, bills sort of change in name and all, but working thanks to Voices for National Service and others, and I think we had a little role in it, helped get an initial expansion of AmeriCorps that, of course, is under threat now. It's at jeopardy. I mean, and in a big way. This is a real moment. And the news cycle's insane. I know it's insane, but we have to break through it. And you have to just keep pushing and making your voices heard. This is a moment right now, today, where we can do that. If you're on social media, et cetera, just push it out because people are not aware of it. And obviously the world's facing multiple crises right now, so it's difficult to break through that noise. But we're gonna keep pushing on it, and we're gonna try and break through the noise and continue to look at not only incremental additions to service opportunities, but really significant structural changes to get to the question that President Clinton asked, which is, what can the next 30 years look like? Yes, we need to just keep moving, and we will. Persistence is important in anything, whether you're building an organization, a business, whether you're serving in communities, as many of you do, that have seen extreme cycles of violence and poverty, which are difficult to break through. I love this line from Domingo Morales. Where is Domingo here? Yeah, so Domingo, By the way, the Army has changed their tattoo policies, so you might get an exemption. But I'm sort of glad they didn't at the time, right? Because your AmeriCorps service put you on a different trajectory. And one of the things that you said is, I want to make it a tradition, service a tradition in my family. And I hope that will be the case in mine as well. My father served in Vietnam. He passed away a couple years ago, but I saw from his example of service, my mother is a nurse and taught nursing for over 49 years. My daughter is here, Charlotte. She's 13. Good to have you here. She's missing school, but we have an exemption for the day. This is a learning opportunity, but I hope that you'll serve, in some capacity. It doesn't matter what that is. And of course, you already are giving back. We helped welcome some Afghan refugees to our community over the last 2 years after that withdrawal. So at any rate, I should come to a close because I'm at 5 minutes, but I want to just close by quoting Governor Wes Moore, who has been a friend for a long time. He was one of the first members of our advisory board. He was the first ever gubernatorial candidate that With Honor's political arms endorsed and got behind. And he said, and I know his chief of staff, I think, is here speaking later today. He said, "Service will save us. Service will save us." I love that line. I think we do need salvation. It's not an overstep right now. We need salvation. President Clinton referred to it as, this can help knit this country back together. It's that, and it's more, and you guys are a part of it, and we're delighted to be a small part of it as well. Thank you.